Gentlemen, well, this evening we have had apologies from Howard Battersby, Ivan Pratt, Richard Trouble, Professor Colin Wilkin, Demetrius Luxton, David Homer, Jeff Bray, Shaquille Qureshi, Eric Duke, and Charles Lister. Now, honoured guests and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce David Wardell, who was at the school from 1947 to 1952, and he is going to propose the toast to the association.
Gentlemen, for the benefit of the 99% of you who have no idea who I am, please let me tell you. I was one of that select group who started at the school in the autumn of 1947, along with your esteemed president. Mind you, we called him Mick in those days, but at some stage he must have decided that Phil was more appropriate for an architect. I've always been very proud of our grammar school. Can you hear me okay? I don't want to use this thing, it's muffled. I've always been proud of our grammar school and grateful to have been educated in such a fine example of those institutions, then numerous but now sadly much less so. Like many of you here tonight, I've often told stories about the idiosyncrasies of some of our masters, such as the obvious one, cabbage giving someone a good leathering while persuading them to look ever harder for the mouse in the knothole. Does anyone also remember Slimo? Dealing out his summary punishments in the gym with a when the mood took him, he would bring the stick down vertically, edgeways, onto the outstretched buttocks of the victim. That one really hurt. It used to bring up a wheel about 1/4 of an inch deep. Nowadays that would be called sadism, and the victim would be candidate for counselling and even compensation. I also remember dear old Nick Tilley, while coaching the hockey team out on the field one day, calling the players round him and saying something like, "What do you think you're doing? Don't waste the ball, give it to Wardell." Well, you know, that phrase blighted my last year at school. Used as a taunt the whole time by the mates. After school I studied engineering and worked in power stations until my deferment expired, and I joined the Royal Air Force for national service, quickly deciding that would be the career for me. The Queen employed me as an engineer, but I was also unusually trained as a pilot and finished up with about 5,000 pilot hours. An engineer by profession, but a pilot by inclination. We were posted all over the place. My wife would tell you with feeling that she set up home in 23 different houses during our life. We twice did 3-year tours in Singapore, and our last 4 years before retirement were spent in Italy, in Rome, and then in the NATO southern headquarters near Naples. It was during this period that there was an incident involving the US space program, which I'll tell you about. One astronaut selected for the mission began to get cold feet as the launch day approached. But when he confided in his wife, she was disgusted. She told him that he couldn't let his country down, especially after all that expensive training. In fact, she said, "If you won't do it, I'll go in your place." So when the time came with the astronaut refusing to go, she put on his spacesuit and joined the crew in the capsule. All went well during the mission, but she wasn't ready for the high G-forces. you encounter on re-entry, and she blacked out. When she came round, she was lying naked in the sick bay of the aircraft carrier Saratoga, and her chest was being massaged downwards by a big medical orderly. And when he saw her coming round, he said, "Don't worry about a thing, Colonel. Once we get your balls back in place, we'll..." It's not true. I retired from the Royal Air Force at 55, but then joined the Volunteer Reserve and flew on a couple of days a week for 11 years, giving flying instruction to something like 6,000 air cadets at RAF leaving. A great way to ease into retirement. Before I leave my time in the Air Force, let me just tell you a bit about life in the 60s during one of the hugely enlarged international airport. And it was during the so-called Forgotten War confrontation with Indonesia during the time of the Sergei, along the mountainous jungle border between Indonesia and Borneo. Our task was to deliver everything that the inaccessible border forts needed to exist: food, drink, ammunition, equipment, fuel, and so on. These supply drops involved difficult flying at low level in the mountains with heavy cloud cover for much. So we were required to deliver by parachute crates of live chickens. Unfortunately, sometimes the crates would break open as they left the aircraft. The rear fuselage would then be full of feathers, and the poor chickens must have had the surprise of their lives to find themselves at 300 feet doing about 120 miles an hour. Another time we were delivering coils of barbed wire and the angle iron posts to support it to a location which had a small village on the banks of a stream just beyond the dropping zone. Once again, the wire and the stakes broke free as they left the aircraft. Imagine the surprise of the villagers as their breakfast routine was disturbed by a good peppering of angle iron posts. When eventually we returned to base, very worried about what we might have achieved in the village, we were mightily relieved to be told that the only slight casualty was a poor chap who had been lingering over his morning ablutions in his outside loo. Imagine his surprise at having his little kazi destroyed around him as he sat there. I expect we probably cured his constipation. Enough of all that then. When the President asked me to say a few words tonight, he said that he would like to hear a bit about my time as a guide in York Minster, which started when I retired 16 years ago. Thomas Scott, who founded our celebrated school as Jesus College, had a brilliant academic start at Cambridge and went on to hold high political office, culminating in 9 years as Chancellor of England. After all of this, he was appointed Archbishop of York and became probably the most competent of all of the medieval archbishops. And it was during his early years at York that he founded our school, a man to whom we should all be grateful, but also a man to whom we can all be very proud. As to guiding, well, the truth is that once you've qualified, while the experience of sharing a love of this great building with thousands of visitors to York is very rewarding, it's very rarely a barrel of laughs. Qualification follows a 5-day intensive course tutored by historians, canons, architects, archaeologists, broderers, glaziers, masons, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, followed of course by examinations. And after all that, and much more daunting, you have to give a guided tour of an hour or so to a senior guide who seems to have been doing the job since the time of Henry VIII. Anyway, I qualified, and some of you may have come round with me when the Association made a visit to York and the Archbishop's Palace a year or two ago. Light relief is occasionally provided by children during tours. For example, the little boy who asked whether the minister was Church of England or Catholic. He was told Church of England, and his response was, "Oh, not Christian then." Another, seeing an image of poor St. Peter, who was crucified upside down, said, "What's he doing, bungee jumping?" Sorry, St. Peter. York Minster is a marvellous place to be associated with, but enormously expensive. The current round of repairs of stonework and so on to the East End will take about 15 years and cost £33 million. And that's just part of it. All this without any government assistance. So if we have any well-heeled and well-oiled, of course, philanthropists here, please see me in the bar afterwards. Gentlemen, will you please be upstanding and join me in a toast to the Old Boys Association.
President Bill Tom, who will respond to the toast.
As Dave did, I shall manage without this if I may. You can all hear me.
No.
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 The worship of the Mayor, Mr. Green of the Deputy Common Mines, guests and gentlemen, I Morris this evening, he and I first attended the grammar school in 1947, and when we were both scotty little lads, I suppose, is the way we could have been described at that time. Though he'll probably say, well, you speak for yourself. But it was most impressive to hear Dave's speech, and I'm grateful to him for that. At least I have to say that I didn't find myself in the same position as a speaker that, I didn't find Dave in the position of a speaker that I heard of at one time, who had droned on and on and on to an audience who were either falling asleep or getting rather exasperated, until one of the audience, who happened to have a book with him, cast it towards the stage where the speaker was standing, in an effort to divert him and to try to point out something that actually he'd gone on long enough. Well, sadly, the book didn't carry as far as the stage. It hit one of the audience in one of the front rows on the back of his ear, whereupon he was heard to say in a muttered tone, "Oh God, it hit me again, I'm still here." Well, at least we didn't have that with Dave. It is my pleasure to propose a toast this evening. I was fortunate to go to the college on a couple of occasions during the summer, and I was most impressed with what I saw there. I have sometimes entertained thoughts of how well the college and the Old Boys Association might come together in some way, but it's obviously not an easy topic anyway. But it is my pleasure to propose a toast to the college, and therefore, gentlemen, will you please respond to the toast to the school and the college to that toast.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. The word pride has been used already by speakers this evening. evening, and I'd just like to stress how proud we are at Thomas Rotherham College to be the successor institution to a grammar school whose history stretches back to 1483. And that tradition of achievement, which is part of our college motto, has been impressed on our current students and staff in our last two prize givings. This year we were honoured to be addressed by a very distinguished old boy of Rotherham Grammar School, Sir Ian Donaldson, who now, of course, is the Chief Medical Officer for England. And last year, we welcomed Mrs. Shirley Bridges, who was married to Harold Bridges, who attended the school in the late 1920s and early 1930s, and went on to be the chairman of Shell. So our students and staff were both, were all much impressed by these two comparatively recent examples of old boys of Rotherham Grammar School who thoroughly distinguished themselves. And then if you look back in the history of the school, you can find numerous other distinguished old boys. For example, Robert Sanderson, who attended the school in the late 16th century, went on to be a professor at Oxford University and chaplain to the King. So I think that we're all very honoured to be part of this whole tradition of education in Rotherham. I was dipping into a history of Rotherham the other day. It was written in the mid-1870s, just as the buildings were being erected at the top end of Moorgate, which of course, in due course, were to become the homes of the grammar school, the place where you all studied. And it's a marvellous passage there in this history. And it says, "One noble college is lifting up its battlemented walls and conspicuous turrets at higher Moorgate. Why should not Rotherham once again, after lapses of obscure centuries, become eminent with candidates awarded the fellowships of Lincoln College and such other scholastic distinctions as Oxford and Cambridge shall be enabled to confer?" But I like to feel that we're going some way towards that at the college. Last autumn, after their A-level results, 7 of our students secured places at colleges in Oxford and Cambridge, and another 6 in our current upper 6 are holding offers conditional on this year's A-level results to go to Oxford or Cambridge. And that's not to mention several hundred others who are going to other universities and places of higher education, which of course weren't established at the time when those words were written in the 1870s. So I very much hope that at Higher Moorgate we are now providing our students with the same opportunities for education, sport, drama, music, other extracurricular activities, and above all performing friendships, the same kind of opportunities that you enjoyed there and that still bring you together today. Thank you very much.
And I guess, gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to introduce President-elect John Chester. His one drawback is that he was a member of Wools. But he is going to propose a toast, I've no doubt, most eloquently, to...
We honoured guests. Before I go on to formally propose this to all our guests here this evening, I'd just like to share with you an article which I read in the newspaper some time ago. I like to do so because, for me, it seems so relevant to the situation in which I find myself here in front of you. It concerns the Chinese New Year. The chap was reading about the Chinese New Year and discovered that he was born in the year of the pig. But the thrust of the article was that a more correct translation would probably have been a boar. So intrigued by this, he turned around to his wife and said, "Tell me, my dear, what do you think? Am I more of a pig or a boar?" "That, my dear," she said, "depends whether you're speaking or eating." And now, more importantly, to our guests. We're fortunate to have with us this evening a distinguished array of some of the former and current notables of Rotherham. We have no less than 3 former principals of Thomas Rotherham College, Messrs. Arthur Trust, Jim Garton and Nigel Briggs, and of course the present principal, Dr. Richard Williams, who we've just heard speak so eloquently. The college has a deserved reputation for excellence, we know this. Some of us, myself included, have seen our children go through the college, either into work or onto university. And we owe you gentlemen a great deal for the helping hand that you've given them in the time there. Thank you. Councillor Alan Jackson and Mr. Grieve Tony Grice. The former, of course, will be very familiar to you if you read the Rotherham Advertiser. Tony should indeed be familiar as he is a member of the Old Boys Association. Both are public servants, and for that reason alone, I'm pleased to record our thanks for the work you do on behalf of all of us. One of the hazards of being a public servant, unfortunately, is constant exposure to the press. Something, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you're all too familiar with. And I have a cautionary tale about a colleague of mine from some time ago who suffered at the hands of the press, albeit unwitting, issued by the little-known Emperor Pertinax. I took it along to the local museum. They were very interested in it, said it was quite valuable, and called in the local press. They came, took his photo, said yes, we'll appear in the newspaper probably tomorrow morning. So the next morning, he bought the newspaper. What he didn't know is that at the side of the article concerning this discovery of the Roman coin was another article without a picture. So when he opened the paper, there he was, holding the coin like that, with a huge cheesy grin on his face, and the headline next to it said, "And now the pill for men." So, Mr. Mayor, be careful. Good answer. Oh, and by the way, for the benefit of former members of SNEL, I should point out that a mayor is in charge of the council. I looked up in Wikipedia a list of prominent citizens of Rotherham. And gentlemen, you continue a long line of public service which stretches back to Roman times. It begins with Roman auxiliaries by the names of Syntusmus, Crotus, and a female camp follower called Very Good Rufilia. I doubt if their idea of public service is quite the same as yours. And also, for the benefit of former members of founders, Rome was a big city in Italy. How is it an empire? I'm coming to that. Two main speakers tonight, Group Captain David Wardle and Mike Dickerson, certainly don't need me to attempt to define their skills. I do want to express the thanks of the association for their willingness to entertain us tonight. An old boy and an old Sestrafeldian, I think that's right, the hardest word I've had to say tonight. So our thanks to you both. There are, of course, other guests in the room, and I thought I might now, just for a further minute or so, try to explain to all our guests what it means to have been a pupil of Rotherham Grammar School. Well, this is my take on it anyway. What you see so splendidly arrayed before you is quite literally, in the words of Mr. Tilling, the cream of the country. As Mr. Tilling in some of the tables, that's pink curtain. So in fact, in case you want to throw it, it's downright random. Every single one of them has had the qualities of loyalty, erudition, manners and integrity knocked into them. And I enjoyed every minute. Unfortunately, of course, it was always the case that one or two boys who attended the school really shouldn't have been there at all. And I can think of one such individual who, after 5 years of being addled by algebra, bamboozled by biology, and confounded by chemistry, left. He got a job in a large carpet shop. And on his first morning, a little old lady turned up at the shop, parked her car outside, went inside, chose a large roll of carpet. The carpet manager, she paid the manager. The carpet manager called the next grabber over and said, take that to the Audi estate outside. So he put the shoulder of the carpet, went outside, wasn't seen for another 2.5 hours. No one knew where the devil he'd gone. After 2.5 hours, he turned up again, sweating profusely. He was gasping for breath. The manager said to him, where have you been? He said, I've been all over one world and nobody's heard of the Audi estate. I was a member of Bishop. Finally, to our guests, can I say that if you go home tonight perhaps having had one or two more glasses of wine than you really should have, your wife's waiting for you, just say to her that you've dined with Gavanos. In the words of Falstaff, the words of Shakespeare, excuse me, it is company, villainous company, being the word of me. So, can I now ask all members of the association to charge their glasses to stand for the toast?
Whether that is something to do with going to school on a bicycle, I'm not sure. But we look forward to hearing from you.
Gentlemen, like our distinguished gentleman on my right, 100% of the water. Chesterfieldian belongs to the group, like you are, of a dying breed. We closed our doors in 1998, so as we call off the bottom end, so we know we can check off. That's similar. We still meet once a year, ours is next month, and I've just been saying to Phil, looking around the room, it's just like next month. You've all got this to look about it. I'll ask to start my little talk. This isn't the normal talk I do, because normally it's in a little confined room and it's bouncing questions and answers, but I'll try and do my best. It's a serious subject, but I'll try and keep it fairly light-hearted. Have we got any Class 1 drivers in the room? Police drivers? No. Have we got any Rolls-Royce trained chauffeurs? No. Those are the two classes of people who don't have to take our test but can become members of the organisation. So that's the standard we're looking at. In other words, we're fairly high up in the ranks of hopefully good and responsive driving. Our little motto is skill with responsibility. And that's what we're trying to do. Just the one before the Morris Minor. Rod Brakes, Wonderworld, the Faithful Young Farmers Association. I think that's quite young, in a little room. And I gave a little spiel, I showed them a little video, and I had a chat about last Friday, and we all had a very nice time. And right at the end, the Secretary, Treasurer, Chairman lady said, thank you very much for the speech, and they said, you'll be very pleased to know that he's not asking for any expenses at all. And as you all know as well, we're saving up for a proper speech. So on that note, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here tonight, Phil, especially. We've had a long chat on the phone about things, and it's a small world. If you're a gentleman here, told my wife calligraphy, so it's all a small world. And one of your former existence to the first house. That's right, yes. So nothing's new, is it? Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for your attention. Driving is a serious thing, and anything we can do to help keep that off the road and make people as a safe driver, that's what we're trying. So if any of you are interested in any more information, if you want to have a word with me afterwards, by all means do so. So once again, thank you for your attention, and thank you for inviting me.
The last item that I have on my programme says, introduce the President who will say a few closing words and supervise the raffle.
I can almost without any shadow of doubt say that I am to assure that you all thank you for your attendance here. It's a most remarkable evening, always, because it's amazing to find so many people who feel such a loyalty for what was an interview in their lives, how many years ago? 40, 50, even more. And there is still that sense of belonging, that sense of gratitude. And so, on that note, gentlemen, I thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to Peter's raffle, which with some trepidation I will try to help with.
Stick your hand in there.
No, it's wrong. Which is British grub.